Good afternoon, everyone. Happy summer and welcome to the Federal Communication Commission's Intergovernmental Affairs quarterly webinar briefing. Thank you for joining us today. I am Kimberly Marshall. I serve as a program manager in the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs within the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau at the Commission. Please note this webinar is being recorded. If you would like to access transcription during this webinar briefing, please click the More button located at the top of your screen and then click the option to access transcription. As folks come in, we encourage you to share your name, title, and representative city, county, or territory in the chat box to learn who's with us today. Since this is a webinar briefing, we cannot see you, so we highly encourage you to stay active in the chat. And if you'd like to submit a question, please be sure to submit it on the Q&A section located at the top of your screen, which is different from the regular chat box. It is my pleasure and my division's pleasure to serve you all and support your local constituents. The mission of the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs is to serve as the Commission's liaison to local, municipal, county, state, and territorial governments, and other regulatory agencies and non-governmental organizations whose members include local government officials. The Office of Intergovernmental Affairs provides outreach, coordination, communication between the Commission and these stakeholders for the purpose of fostering a greater understanding of the Commission's programs, policies, rules, and decisions. Specifically, we aim to maintain collaborative partnerships, especially in critical moments such as emergency preparedness and the deployment of modern technologies, and ensure an easy and accessible access point into the Commission and our work. The Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau is eager to partner with you as the Commission works to promote leadership and strength in the defense of our communications and infrastructure. Now, to welcome you all, I want to introduce Barbara Espin, the Deputy Chief of the Federal Communication Commission's Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you, Kim, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Barbara Espin, and it's my pleasure to introduce myself and welcome you on behalf of the Commission to this IGA quarterly briefing. As Deputy Chief in Consumer and Governmental Affairs, I oversee the Bureau's Office of Intergovernmental Affairs and its Office of Native Affairs and Policy. These offices concentrate on productive engagement with state, local, and tribal governments. The Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, or CGB, as Kim has said, develops and implements the Commission's consumer policies and serves as the agency's connection to the American consumer. CGB also develops and implements the Commission's governmental affairs programs. Its portfolio stretches from disability rights, developing consumer policy and rules, handling consumer complaints, engaging in consumer outreach and education, and it further extends to outreach and productive engagement with state, local, and tribal governments and tribal government organizations. I first started with the FCC in 1991, and over 3 separate tours of duty, as we call them, I've held leadership positions in the Common Carrier Bureau, predecessor to today's Wireline Competition Bureau, the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau twice, the Cable Services Bureau, which no longer exists as such, the Media Bureau, the Enforcement Bureau, and Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, now my second time in my current position. I share my experiences to highlight that I, along with the great IGA team, have a breadth of knowledge and experience from across the agency and are here to serve as a resource for you. Under Chairman Carr, the Commission's focus is on building a stronger and more connected America through his ambitious Connect America agenda. Build America agenda. The Build America agenda focuses, among other things, on facilitating high-speed infrastructure builds, boosting the U.S. space economy, advancing national security, and strengthening the telecom workforce. The Build America agenda aims to achieve these objectives through targeted policies and regulatory reforms that support innovation, competition, and job creation. At its most recent monthly meeting, the Commission will advance the Build America agenda by taking action to improve reliability and interoperability of next-gen 911, removing barriers and regulatory hurdles for wireline deployment, modernizing the emergency alert and wireless emergency alerts, and proposing measures to protect children when using E-rate funded network. Additionally, I want to mention that the FCC recognizes July as National Disability Pride Month, which commemorates the anniversary of the passage of the American with Disabilities Act, the ADA, being signed into law on July 26, 1990. Through CGB's Disability Rights Office, the FCC enforces telecommunications accessibility standards and hosts events to promote digital inclusion. We encourage everyone to learn more by visiting www.fcc.gov/consumers. Also, in recognition of this year's 36th anniversary of the ADA and the 16th anniversary of the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act, the FCC is soliciting nominations for the FCC Chairman's Awards for Advancement in Accessibility for individuals who've made lasting and impactful contributions to the advancement of accessible communications technologies and services in the fields of advocacy, leadership, and research. Nominations are due before midnight, August 7th, and award winners will be recognized in a ceremony to be held at the FCC on October 8th. To learn more about the FCC Chairman's Awards for Advancement in Accessibility, please contact FCC AAA at fcc.gov. So in today's webinar, we're fortunate to have a group of subject matter experts from the Commission who will share the key proposals for updating the E-rate program, modernizing the nation's alerting and disaster reporting systems, and improving next-generation 911 reliability and interoperability. So thank you again for joining. We appreciate the opportunity to engage and collaborate. And now I'm going to pass it back to Kim to get the actual experts rolling. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Our first presenter is Kristen Berkland, who serves as an attorney advisor in the Telecommunications Access Policy Division within the Wireline Competition Bureau. Kristen will provide information on the E-rate program and the Student Screen Time Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, which seeks to strengthen the E-rate program integrity and streamline program administration. Please welcome Kristen to the call.
Thank you so much, Kim and Barbara. Can you hear and see me okay?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, as mentioned before, my name is Kristen Berkland, and I'm an attorney advisor in the Wireline Competition Bureau. And I'm pleased to join you. It's just afternoon for me, so I'm pleased to join you this early afternoon to talk about the E-rate program's Ensuring Safe Screens Notice of Proposed Rulemaking and Program Integrity Further Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. As we will discuss, the NPRM asks, among other things, a number of questions regarding whether the program has fulfilled its broadband connectivity objectives and other goals set by Congress when it passed the Communications Act of 1934. The further notice of proposed rulemaking proposes and seeks comment on actions the Commission can take to strengthen E-rate program integrity. And we're already at the first slide, which is fantastic. These first two slides are going to cover the NPRM portion of the item. So for slide 2, or what to me is slide 2, ensuring safe screens NPRM, in the nearly 3 decades since the E-rate program was established, it has played an important role in expanding broadband connectivity to and within schools and libraries, with some data sources stating that virtually all schools have broadband connectivity and Wi-Fi. Given the expansion of broadband connectivity in schools and libraries, the NPRM seeks comment on the extent to which E-rate funded networks and services are being used responsibly and for an educational purpose as statutorily required. In particular, the Commission is interested in understanding the E-rate program's progress in achieving its statutory goals, whether the program should be re-examined in light of the current state of school and library connectivity and current demand for program funds, and whether there continues to be a role for special construction within the program. And if you would please advance the slide. Thank you so much. So ensuring safe screens NPRM, the second piece of this, the ensuring children's safe use of screens and re-examining SIPA. So that first slide was about broadband connectivity. This now shifts to safe screen use and re-examining SIPA. With the increased use of the internet and connected devices by children, including in educational settings, in recent years, there have been rising concerns among parents, guardians, teachers, researchers, and policymakers about the impact of screen time on children. For example, some studies have found that excessive screen time is linked with the rise of youth depression and anxiety. Other studies have found that increased screen time may lead to lower reading and math achievement on standardized tests in elementary school. Against this backdrop, the Commission seeks comment on the impact of the E-rate program on school technology choices, including how increased screen time impacts educational outcomes. It also seeks comment on 1, measures it can take to empower parents, guardians, and teachers to ensure the program advances student learning outcomes and better protects children when using E-rate funded networks, including by potentially limiting screen time. And 2, whether the Commission's current interpretation of the Children's Internet Protection Act is the best reading of the statute, and whether its rules implementing SIPA sufficiently protect children from inappropriate and harmful content when using E-rate funded networks. And if we could please advance the slide. Thank you so much. And now we're shifting over to the FNPRM portion of the item. Building on the Commission's recent successes and recognizing the role consultants play in assisting program participants, the FNPRM proposes and seeks comment on a number of measures aimed at enhancing program integrity and the Commission's and USAC's oversight of consultants and consulting firms by establishing a definition of consultant and a registration database, requiring an annual consultant certification and disclosure form, and prohibiting percentage-based fee arrangements, among other things. In addition, the FNPRM seeks comment on efforts to strengthen the Commission's oversight of the E-rate program, including adding new certifications and establishing deadlines to promote clarity for program participants. Lastly, the FNPRM seeks comment on a proposal to eliminate certain Emergency Connectivity Fund, or ECF, program rules from the Code of Federal Regulations, consistent with the Commission's recent efforts to eliminate unnecessary and burdensome rules and regulations. And we can advance the slide. Thank you. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer questions at this time. Thank you so much.
We do have two questions for you, Christian. The first one is, what changes were made in the item between the public draft release and now? And the second question is, can we expect more top to bottom reviews of other USF programs?
Sure. Thank you so much for both those questions. I will take them in order, but if it seems like I've missed addressing a question, please don't hesitate to let me know. So
Okay.
thank you. So in terms of changes that were made in the item between the public draft release and now, key changes include new questions regarding the lowest corresponding price rule. That was something that came in after the public draft release. The definition of a consultant, there were some changes there. SIPA compliance deadlines is another thing that changed in the item between public draft release and now. And issues, of course, brought up in ex parte filings. We always keep an eye on the dockets, and we keep an eye out for those ex partes. And as we're able, we incorporate them into the item. And I think the second question was whether there would be more top to bottom reviews of USF programs. Okay. So the commission has already initiated reviews of the Lifeline and high cost programs earlier this year, and will continue focusing its efforts on potential USF reforms that will streamline administration and eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse throughout the programs. So certainly the commission continues to look at the USF programs for ways that it can streamline and address waste, fraud, and abuse issues throughout the programs.
Thank you. Is that it for questions, Yvette?
I'm not seeing anything else in the chat. I'm doing a quick skim here.
Everything is in the chat here and it's in the Q&A. So those were the only two questions that.
All right.
So,
thank you.
All right.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Kristen. For
thank
your
you so much for inviting me.
Thanks. We would next like to welcome Austin Randazzo, an attorney advisor in the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, to share the latest efforts to modernize the emergency alert systems and wireless emergency alerts to make them more helpful to responding authorities. His remarks will also touch on the measures to modernize the disaster information reporting system. Welcome, Austin. Thank you for joining.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Again, Austin Randazzo, Deputy Chief in the front office of the Public Safety Bureau. Good to have everybody here. I'm excited to talk about alerting and disaster response today. So let me start with talking about alerting and what the action that we've taken most recently. So on June 25th, last month, the Commission did take some steps to modernize the nation's alerting systems. So let me provide a little bit of background information for folks who may not be very familiar with this topic. The United States' National Public Alert and Warning System gives the President and thousands of authorized federal, state, tribal, territorial, and local entities, which we call alerting authorities, with the ability to send emergency alerts to the public. So I think folks are very familiar with these, just from receiving them as members of the public, where if you get an alert over your radio or TV, that is the emergency alert system. Those are alerts sent by radio broadcasters, cable television providers, satellite radio and television services, and so forth. You can also get alerts through your cell phone. And that's something that we call wireless emergency alerts, which are alerts that are sent out voluntarily by commercial mobile service providers, your wireless provider. So starting last year, the FCC opened a proceeding that launched a first principles reexamination of the nation's alerting systems. And we explored ways to try to make them more effective, efficient, and better able to serve the public's needs. We really took a look at what are the goals of these alerting systems? What are they trying to accomplish? And are they being effective at doing that? Or do we need to redirect things a little bit in order to make that better at its primary function? So we put out last month a report and order, along with a further notice of proposed rulemaking. I'm going to start by talking about the report and order. And what that did was adopt some rules related to national security and cybersecurity. So we took steps to preserve the public's trust in the emergency alert system by requiring those participants in the emergency alert system, that is radio broadcasters, the cable operators, and so forth, to take steps to protect against hijacking by cyber criminals and our nation's adversaries. Specifically, what those EAS participants are going to be required to do going forward is to secure equipment that they use in their programming stream by doing three things. First, using better passwords. That means changing default passwords from the ones that are originally on the equipment, and using strong passwords to make sure that they're not, using something easy like the word password to secure their equipment. This helps make sure that the equipment is only getting accessed by the folks who have permission to access it, and that that reduces the threat to their threat from cyber criminals from accessing the equipment they're not supposed to and using it to send out something like a fake alert. We also require those same EAS participants to test and install security patches promptly so that they are running the latest software on their systems, they're getting rid of known vulnerabilities, and that things are as patched up as they can be. And lastly, we require that EAS participants use a network firewall or comparable network segmentation practice to limit remote access so that only authorized devices and users can get access to their network. Now, these seem like pretty basic security measures because they are, and we're hopeful that this will help prevent some incidents that we've seen in the past where there's been something like a weak password that's been taken advantage of to send out a fake alert. So we're hoping that this helps prevent those going forward. Now, the further notice of proposed rulemaking set out some possible rules that the FCC is looking at adopting, depending on what the record says. So we are going to be eagerly awaiting feedback on these proposals to hear what the public thinks and to hear what you all think. So as I'm going through these, please think about whether this is something that you'll want to submit comments to the FCC about, if you have an opinion on whether these would be good ideas or not, because we'd be very eager to hear from you all. So first off, one of the things we're going to be looking at is ensuring the emergency alert system's integrity by requiring the authentication of all alerts. Today, these EAS participants only need to authenticate an alert if it has a digital signature already in it. But if they receive an alert with no digital signature at all, they're allowed to just put that in the air. We propose to change that going forward so that all alerts have to be authenticated before they are put on the air. We're also looking at improving the detection and blocking of duplicate alerts by establishing a universal alert identification number. What we've learned is that especially for wireless emergency alerts, different wireless providers will use a different way to identify those alerts in their network, so that if you have a device that roams from one network to another, you may get an alert more than once, and that's something we want to prevent to avoid public confusion. So that's something that we are looking at considering, is creating a universal ID number so everyone is using the same ID to determine whether or not an alert should be shown on your phone. We're also going to be looking at making sure that wireless emergency alerts are received consistently. Some providers send alerts in different ways. Some providers will send out an alert once every 60 seconds to make sure that everybody can get it. And if you're entering an area, your phone will get it and will know whether or not to show it to you. And some other providers, they may only send it out once, so that if you're not there in the geographic area that could be affected by an emergency, that at the time that they send it, you're out of luck and you're not going to get it at all. So we are looking at seeking comment on whether that should be the same for all providers, at least sending out that alert once every 60 seconds while the alert is active. When it comes to geographic accuracy, we're looking at eliminating some outdated geo-targeting exceptions. Under FCC rules, wireless providers have to send those alerts to be accurate to within 1/10 of a mile, but sometimes they go to the wrong locations because of some outdated exceptions in our rules. For example, if the wireless provider is using old legacy equipment, they may not be required to target that alert for you with that level of accuracy. Or if your location services are off on your phone, you may not be receiving that alert accurately because your phone doesn't necessarily know where it is. So we're looking at maybe sunsetting some of those exceptions to make sure that that phones can get these alerts as accurately as possible in all instances. We're also looking at making alerts more effective through the use of symbols. So there's when you get an alert on your TV screen or on your phone, we're considering, is there a set of universal symbols that it should be used? So if you get an alert about a thunderstorm warning, that it shows an icon with a thunderstorm. Or if you're something for a high wind warning, that you get something that indicates high wind. That's a way that could be language independent so that whether you speak English or not, and regardless of the language of the alert, you can see that and understand, more accurately and more quickly what's the type of emergency that your phone is asking you to respond to. Similarly, we're looking at whether to improve the ability of an earthquake alert to grab the public's attention. And there's a couple of ways that we're seeking comment on doing this. One way we're looking at is whether we should be, whether devices, when they receive an earthquake alert, they should have a text-to-speech announcement. Instead of the beeping noise to get people's attention, should it actually talk to you and say, there is an earthquake, and tell you what to do right away? Would that be a quicker way for the public to understand the emergency and to react to it? We're also asking whether instead of that, it should have a unique attention signal, something special for earthquake alerts, so that when the public hears them come in, they know what that is and they know how to react. So we're asking whether or not that's something we should do, or whether there's reasons that we should avoid taking that kind of action. We're also looking at eliminating some outdated rules that may allow more flexibility for stakeholders in this space. We're proposing to allow the EAS participants that send out alerts to use software instead of standalone hardware, as our rules require today. Today, every radio broadcaster, TV broadcaster, cable provider, they have to have a physical box that they use to receive and send out these alerts. And they have to have a piece of hardware. There are no alternatives to that. However, some stakeholders have requested the FCC explore the idea of allowing software instead, under the theory that software could potentially be cheaper to implement, that software could potentially be more flexible in how it could be deployed. So we're asking about that, and we're asking questions around if we do allow for the use of software for the emergency alert system, how should we go about allowing that to make sure that it remains secure, and to make sure that that EAS continues to work the way it should every time. And lastly, we are proposing to retire the 90-character maximum version of wireless emergency alert messages, which some alerting authorities have told us are too short to be useful. As some of this call may be familiar with, when you send out an alert as a government agency, you have to create two alerts. You have to create one that is 90 characters long, and you also have to create one that's 360 characters long. So you've got to actually create two messages, which can take time during an emergency. And what we've heard from some stakeholders is that the 90-character message is really short. It doesn't convey a lot of helpful information. It takes up time that can be spent getting the alert out more quickly if it was just the 360-character alert that would be sent out. So we're seeking comment on whether we should retire that, and whether we should just be having the 360-character message go out. And we do ask questions around, are there consumers out there that still have older devices that rely on the 90-character maximum version? So they would be potentially without alerts if this were to happen. But we do ask those questions to understand what's the best fit for stakeholders in this space, and what's the best course forward for balancing the equities and protecting public safety. So that kind of wraps up my discussion for our recent actions for emergency alerts. I do want to encourage the folks on this call to submit your comments with your views on these proposals. Those comment deadlines have not yet been set, but we'll put out an announcement when that's happened so that folks can be aware and know when they need to file. So I guess let me pause my presentation there to see if we have any questions on this particular subject before I move on to talk about disaster reporting. Okay, hearing nothing with regard to questions and seeing nothing in the chat, I'm going to move on to talking about our disaster information reporting system. So this is an action we took.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
Can I interrupt for one quick second? I do have a question here. I think it says something in reference to all of these proposed changes only for EAS and also WEA mobile alerts? They just typed it in.
Great. So wonderful question. So different proposals apply to either EAS or WEA or both. For the ones around for geo-targeting, we are looking at, for example, eliminating some of the WEA geo-targeting exceptions, while for EAS, we're looking at allowing the use of polygons for the first time, if that's something that EAS participants want to do, which is very exciting. So the proposals may differ for different types of alerting. So we do recommend that you take a look at our notice of proposed rulemaking and get a good sense of which proposals apply to which systems. But we are focused just on the emergency alert system and wireless emergency alerts. We are not looking at other alerting methods that might be out there, like private systems that government agencies may contract with to send out alerts. We are not looking at things like road signs that can be updated with alerts, where we're really just focused on the aspects of the FCC has historically focused on, which are the emergency alert system and wireless emergency alerts. So please, I urge you to take a look at the notice of proposed rulemaking, and it gets into detail kind of which proposals apply to which systems. Okay, wonderful. So in May of this year, the FCC also adopted a third report and order to modernize its disaster information reporting system. And the goal here in this proceeding was to ease burdens on communications providers that have to make the filings in the system, but also increase the usefulness of the information that the system collects. So for those who aren't aware, the FCC has what we call the Disaster Information Reporting System, or DIRS for short, and it collects infrastructure status and service restoration information from communications providers during major disasters. So if there is a major disaster that knocks out lots of communications services, wireline services, wireless services, cable, then the FCC, in collaboration with FEMA, can choose to activate the system to try to get information from communications providers on a daily basis about what's going on out there. So we get information on subscribers that are affected. We get information on geographic areas that are affected, how many towers are up and down, things of that nature that really give the FCC and other government stakeholders a sense of what the situation is out there. And that can help the emergency management officials that have access to this information efficiently prioritize their disaster response efforts. Now, the filing in the system is mandatory for different types of providers, for cable providers, wireless, wireline, and interconnected VoIP providers. It's voluntary for other types of providers. It's voluntary for broadcasters. It's voluntary for providers of satellite services. Right now, DIRS, or prior to this order, DIRS was a little complicated. It included about 10 different worksheets for different communication service providers to report status information. They could complete these manually or through a single filing, through batch filing. But there were lots of different forms, lots of different information that was being requested. So the core thing that this report and order that the commission adopted back in May did was it required the redesign of DIRS. So it's going to allow, instead of all of these 10 different forms, it's going to allow manual filers to submit a single dynamic form that will allow it to dynamically fill depending on what options you select to show you just the relevant fields to fill out. There's also going to have a one-click option. So if a provider has filed and they have no changes the next day, they don't have to go back in and refill out the whole form. With a single click, they can say, yes, I'm currently have the same status as yesterday. I don't have any changes to report, which makes it much easier for them to file and saves resources during an emergency. We're also going to stop collecting unnecessary information by eliminating some of the fields that the commission's determined don't provide sufficient value for emergency response during that situation. Some of the things that we're also doing to streamline these filings is that the commission decided to eliminate the requirement to file DIRS reports 24 hours after DIRS is activated. That was a very recent requirement over the last couple of years. And the reason the commission decided to eliminate that requirement is because there's often a lot of uncertainty immediately following the deactivation of DIRS on when everything will be back up and running. And what those reports did is required providers to estimate when restoration would occur. And we concluded that it was unreasonable to, during that stage of disaster, to try to make accurate representations on when service would be fully restored. We also eliminated the reporting requirement for non-facilities-based providers. So that's mobile virtual network operators and wireline and connected VoIP resellers, because they don't have their own infrastructure to report. So it doesn't make sense for them to report in a system about infrastructure status when they don't have their own infrastructure. It helps avoid duplicate reports and keeps people focused on the information that's really the core of what we're looking for. We also decided to improve DER's ability to accept voluntary submissions of location information, particularly about service areas that are affected by disasters and the locations of facilities that are out of service. So providers will have more options to submit that kind of location data that emergency managers can receive and then rely on. And we're also, for the first time, going to be requiring DERS reporting for public safety, voice, and broadband network operators. That includes services like FirstNet. And given the critical connectivity that those kinds of services provide to public safety agencies during disasters, we thought it was important that they also share infrastructure status information so that emergency managers can rely on that when planning their response to a disaster. So that sums up what the Commission did in May to update its disaster information reporting system. So I do want to point out in closing that this data can be shared with state, territorial, and tribal agencies. So if you are here on behalf of a state, territorial, or tribal agency and you are interested in receiving that infrastructure data that the FCC receives, please reach out to me after this presentation. Please email my email, austin.randazzo@fcc.gov, or send an email to the email address on our information sharing page on our website. We can walk you through the application process and see whether it's a good fit for you to get access to this infrastructure data. We'd like as many of agencies that are eligible for it as possible to have that access, because it is a huge help to understand what's going on during a disaster. And that's it for my presentation. Again, happy to take questions. I think I did see there might be a few.
I think we do have a question for you.
Great.
Yes. Hi, Austin. We have a couple questions. And the first one is, during a storm, who has access to the data and is it confidential? And do you want me to wait for the second one, or you're ready? Just give you both.
Yeah, so I can answer the questions that are there.
Okay.
Yeah, so that information is received daily from the communications providers. The cadence generally is they're required to report it at 10 a.m. every day while DERS is activated, which the FCC does through an announcement and make a public notice. That information is confidential, so the entities that have access to it have to take great care to protect it because it is competitively sensitive. But we do allow access to federal, state, territorial, and tribal agencies. There's an application process on our website. If you search for outage information sharing, there's a web page that'll explain what you need to do to apply for that access. If you are a county or local or municipal agency, you can't get direct access to the database, but if your state has access, they are allowed to share it with you. So please, if that's your situation and you want access to this data, please urge your state agencies to get access so that they can help you in turn. Again, we're happy to talk to you. Please reach out to us after this call, and we're happy to share. With respect to the accuracy of the data, I mean, we rely on the providers to report accurate data to us based on what they understand from the prior 24 hours. And so it's accurate as of the time they file it with us every morning while DERS is activated. But the granularity depends on the nature of the disaster. We typically activate DERS for several counties at once, and we look for results, look to understand what's going on in each county. So we have a good sense of what the scope of the network effects are of a disaster, and what the right reaction to that should be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Austin. Thanks, Yvette, for the questions. Next, we'll have Chris Fideli. He's an attorney advisor in the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. Chris will discuss efforts to improve reliability and interoperability with the nation's next generation 911 transition. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm an attorney advisor in the Policy and Licensing Division of the FCC's Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. So one of our top priorities is promoting the public's access to reliable 911 communications. And another top priority right now is overseeing the nationwide transition from legacy 911 to next generation 911 throughout the country. To advance these objectives, last month the FCC adopted a report and order implementing new updated regulations to ensure the reliability and interoperability of 911 networks in the NG 911 environment. So I will cover these rules today. Let's see, next, we're on the first slide already, good. So this item grew from proposals in our March 2025 NPRM. The new rules align the FCC's reliability framework with the transition to NG 911 architectures and respond to increases in multi-state 911 outages beyond the prior reliability rules framework. So to wind back the clock, the 2013 rules were the original adopted 911 reliability rules. They primarily relied on reliability for certain ILEC and RLEC central offices and equipments, like selective routers, Aliani database, and 911 circuits. The 2013 rules also applied to, as a practical matter, to NGCS and EZINet facilities, providing the NG 911 functional equivalent of legacy location routing and 911 circuits. So what the order does is implements a technology-neutral definition of covered 911 service providers, or CSPs, involved in the real-time call flow of 911 traffic to NG 911 networks, to include service providers that control or operate critical pathways and components in NG 911 systems. We update the best practices for IP networks to adopt measures that are reasonable for reliable 911 services in an IP world based on recommendations from CISRIC. And we reduce the certification frequency for CSPs to match what the FCC does in the CALEA context. One initial certification followed by certifications when there are material changes. We allow 911 authorities, statewide, tribal, territorial entities to access the reliability filings directly from CSPs, and we adopt a definition of interoperability that tracks proposed legislation. At the same time as the order, the FCC adopted a further notice, which seeks comment on additional interoperability measures, as well as implementation of direct video calling. So now I'll go into more detail about each of these things. And we'll go to the next slide, please. Okay. So for starters, who is a covered 911 service provider in the NG 911 world? In legacy systems, most 911 traffic aggregation happened at or near the local ILEC selective router, and most originating service providers, or OSPs, the end user providers, connected directly to that ILEC. In NG 911 systems, OSPs transport their 911 traffic further distances to reach centralized EZINets, and significant caller location processing and TDM IP conversion happens before the EZINet. These new NG 911 entities provide substantial 911 traffic aggregation processing and transport before 911 calls reach the EZINet. All CSPs under the 2013 rules are still CSPs. In addition, CSPs now also include entities that provide covered 911 services, for which a failure would impede the real-time routing delivery of transfer of traffic. And here are some entities on this page that meet the definition that we've highlighted in this order. First are NGCS providers. They are CSPs when they have a direct contractual relationship with the 911 authority. Next, we have EZINet operators. These are CSPs that provide transport from NG 911 delivery points, NGCS facilities, and PSAPs. They are covered service providers, but if they're retaining underlying transport providers, those underlying providers are not CSPs. Major IP transport providers are CSPs when they operate facilities of OC48 or 2.5 gigabits per second or higher and serve 2 or more OSPs, excluding the provider's own traffic. IP 911 traffic aggregators transport the traffic of 2 or more OSPs 911 traffic that's been separated from the OSP's general voice and text traffic. And lists and transitional gateways, the next box is here. These are covered service providers when they serve more than one OSPs. That's the location information server or lists, and the IP TDM conversion gateways like the LNG, ESGW, LSRG, and LPG. Interstate EZNet interconnection facilities are IP 911 traffic transport paths connecting EZNets for failover redundancy or 911 call transfers and traffic exchange. So who is not a CSP? State and local governments, if they operate their own facilities that do any 911 functions, remain exempt, as they always have been under the 2013 rules. OSPs, originating providers, are not CSPs. They may contract with CSPs to fulfill their obligations to transport and process 911 traffic in NG 911 environments. This definition does not change the application of either the NG 911 transition rules or the PSAP outage notification rules, and cost allocation under the NG 911 transition remains the same. Okay, next slide, IP reliability benchmarks, please. Okay. The new rules provide updated reliability benchmarks recommended by CISRIC, that's the FCC's advisory committee, for IP facilities that are already prevailing best practices in the industry. These benchmarks leverage the inherent strengths of IP-based systems to adapt and self-heal in real time. While these benchmarks are generally appropriate for IP networks, CSPs still have the flexibility to adopt alternative measures in lieu of any specific benchmark, or may certify that any of the benchmarks are inapplicable to their networks. The 3 benchmarks for IP and transitional NG 911 facilities are physical diversity, operational integrity, and network monitoring. Okay, so first, physical diversity. To meet this benchmark, an IP CSP would certify for its covered 911 paths, whether they have implemented automatic rerouting and failover capabilities, load balancing, and have geographically distributed routing facilities, transport nodes, or node links sufficient to reasonably mitigate the risks of single points of failure. We modified the benchmark proposed in the reliability NPRM based on comments for industry to make it more appropriate for IP networks and the best practices that are existing, which calls for mitigating single points of failure rather than the legacy auditing and tagging standard of eliminating single points of failure through physical plant inspection. This is required for EZNets, major IP transport, IP 911 aggregation, and interstate EZNet interconnecting facilities, the entities that transport. Operational integrity is the next one on this list. IP CSPs meet this benchmark if their covered facilities have the capability to ensure continuity of services via an uninterruptible power supply and automatic switchover to geographically diverse backup facilities. This is required for IP service facilities operators like NGCS facilities, LIS, LNG, LSRG, the TDM IP conversion gateways. And then specifically for TDM IP conversion, they may certify to either this operational integrity benchmark or to the legacy benchmark of 24 hours of backup power, as is appropriate to the configuration of those conversion equipment. And finally, network monitoring. IP CSPs meet this benchmark if they use geographically distributed automatic disruption detection and alarm systems to monitor their IP paths, facilities, or server equipment. And this is required for all of those IP CSPs just mentioned. Okay, next slide. Okay. The order took steps to promote NG 911 interstate interoperability by adopting a definition of what it means to be interoperable and requiring certain of the CSPs to report on their ability to support seamless transfers of 911 traffic between NG 911 networks. Okay, so the definition, as you can see, focuses on capabilities of NG 911 to exchange voice, text, and other data between jurisdictions and service providers without proprietary interfaces. And this, again, tracks legislative language across several bills before Congress. NGCS and EZINet providers, in particular, are the CSPs which have a direct role in enabling interoperability as defined in this item. They are going to be required to submit a one-time report on their completed and future actions to enable NG911 interoperability consistent with the definition. So we're going to be interested in seeing a snapshot of progress, and these reports we expect they're going to be under the order they're going to be doing 18 months after the FCC releases a public notice announcing Office of Management and Budget approval of the regulation. So that's still a little ways away before we get those reports. Okay, next slide. Okay, the CSP filings. Okay, so the order implements a streamlined reliability certification process than what has existed in the past by eliminating the annual certification requirement. The new 911 reliability certifications will allow CSPs to certify reliability at the network level on a per state basis and will no longer require submission of the same detailed site-based data for thousands of different facilities that we historically have. CSPs will need to submit a one-time initial certification after the same 18-month phase-in that I was just discussing under the rules, which will be announced by public notice, and that will trigger the 18 months to file the initial CSP 911 reliability certifications, as well as the interoperability reports. For the reliability certifications in particular, CSPs will have a continuing obligation to update the certifications following any material changes. They're going to be required to exercise reasonable judgment in whether a change to its ownership structure, networks, facilities, operations, or reliability practices render the previous certification no longer accurate, and then file an updated certification within 90 days. Unless, we will not consider material changes if they discover a network degradation and then remedy it within 90 days. You don't have to update for that. If the change reflects incremental conformance with the reliability benchmarks I discussed earlier, for less than 50% of your covered 911 facilities, you don't have to report that, unless it's major network overhaul with more than 50%. And the change to a covered 911 service provider's ownership is pro forma in nature, don't have to report that either. If a CSP has not filed a reliability certification previously under the 2013 rules, then they will also have to submit within 6 months of that public notice a one-time attestation identifying themselves as covered under the new rules. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, 911 authority access to annual filings. So this is a new rule. There was no access to these filings for state government entities previously, but now after the 18-month phase-in period, statewide, territorial, and tribal 911 authorities can access reliability filings directly from the CSPs to help with their planning and oversight of 911 networks in their jurisdictions. To obtain these access, CSPs may require the 911 authority to sign a confidentiality agreement under the same terms of confidentiality governing state agencies' access to the Network Outage Reporting System, or to NORS. CSPs may omit or redact information relating to portions of their network or facilities that do not provide covered services to and are not located in the requesting 911 authority's jurisdiction. CSPs have 14 days to provide the filings to 911 authorities after request. If they don't, 911 authorities may always request these filings directly from the Public Safety Bureau here at the FCC. Okay, next slide. The further notice of proposed rulemaking. So this is, we're seeking comments on some additional changes to these rules, specifically on interstate interoperability and direct video calling. So for interoperability, we propose that NGCS and EZINet provider CSPs must test the transfer of 911 traffic to facilities in at least 2 other states and with 3 other NGCS and EZINet providers. We've also proposed that the 911 authority designate which 2 states and which 3 facilities its EZNet and NGCS provider contractors must test with. The further notice also asks what is needed for NG 911 jurisdictions to implement direct video calling, or DVC. How should 911 authorities signal readiness to accept DVC 911 calls? Should NG 911 jurisdictions conduct pilot programs to test improvements in accessibility that DVC will bring in NG 911 systems? So we already have the comment and reply comment dates on this. The comments will be due August 10th, and the reply comments will be due September 8th, since the further notice has now been published in the Federal Register. So we look forward to seeing your comments there, and we encourage you to file comments. That concludes the briefing. I'll take any questions that anybody might have.
There are no questions at this time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you to all our subject matter experts for sharing these critical updates. As we close the call, I want to remind you about the Commission's rulemaking process and ways you can engage and give feedback to the Commission throughout this process. You may send comments identified by docket number associated with the rulemaking using any of the following methods. Submit through the Commission's electronic comment filing system, submit through the federal government's e-rulemaking portal, or submit paper comments. Next slide, please. Please note that all public filings are searchable. Anyone can find and read the electronic form of all comments received in any of our dockets. They can be downloaded through the Commission's electronic comment filing system. To search comments submitted on a specific document, you may view them by visiting the website www.fcc.gov/edocs. Next slide, please. We encourage you to stay informed about the Commission's rulemaking. The Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau has a contact list. If you're not already signed up to join our contact list, please do so by visiting www.fcc.gov/listserv. We continue to send weekly email updates on some of the Commission's latest programs and a digest of our monthly open meeting decisions on final adopted items. You can also sign up for a daily digest from the Commission that provides a brief synopsis of Commission orders, news releases, speeches, public notices, and all other Commission documents that are released each day. If you want to be notified when new comments on a specific document are submitted, you can also subscribe to the government's RSS feed for specific proceedings. We also invite you to attend the Commission's monthly open meetings, which are live streamed and open to the public. The next open meeting will take place next Thursday, July 22nd. Next slide, please. We continue to look forward to attending intergovernmental conferences and events to both hear and learn from state and local leaders and their constituents. It also gives us an opportunity to highlight the Commission's ongoing work. Some of the upcoming conferences from intergovernmental associations are listed here on the screen. If you would like to schedule a meeting with one of our subject matter experts or invite the Commission to attend an event or conference, please reach out to iga@fcc.gov. We'd be happy to support. Also, please save the date for our next quarterly briefing set for Wednesday, October 14th, 2026. Next slide. And lastly, a reminder that today and tomorrow, the FCC is hosting an industry workshop to discuss proposed reforms related to IP interconnection, intercarrier compensation, and legacy universal service fund issues. The event takes place at FCC headquarters, but is also being live streamed for the public at www.fcc.gov/live. Registration is optional, but strongly encouraged and will expedite in-person admission to the workshop. On behalf of the IGA team, I would like to thank all of our speakers and thank all of you for joining and participating in today's quarterly webinar briefing. This concludes our session. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you again for your continued partnership. Goodbye, everyone.